Christmas of 2017 in the town of Oak Bay was supposed to be magical. The whole town was twinkling with lights and children were waiting for miracles. But for Sarah Cotton, this holiday turned into an icy silence. On that morning, while families in neighboring apartments gathered around decorated trees and eagerly unwrapped presents, police cars were converging on their apartment building in a prestigious neighborhood with an ocean view. What the officers saw in the beams of their flashlights inside that dark, powerless apartment made the entire country freeze. This is not just a story about a family drama. This is a story about how a single judicial error and the blindness of the system led to an irreversible tragedy. A tragedy that forever changed the laws of Canada. But the price of these changes turned out to be too high. What actually happened behind closed doors on that Christmas morning? Sarah Cotton was a local celebrity in the good sense of the word. She grew up in Oak Bay, graduated from the University of Victoria, and built a successful career in PR. Active and energetic, Sarah achieved success in everything. In 2009, she met Aubrey Berry. He seemed like the perfect match. He was a successful economist working for the local ferry company that connected the coast to the mainland. Their romance developed rapidly. After a beautiful wedding in 2011, they became parents to two wonderful daughters. The eldest, Chloe, was born in 2011, and 2 years later, in 2013, little Aubrey came into the world. To those around them, Sarah and Andrew's life looked cloudless. Successful careers, a home in a good neighborhood, and two beautiful children. The young parents seemed genuinely in love and caring. But by 2013, the facade of the happy family began to crumble. Andrew's behavior changed dramatically. From a calm intellectual, he was turning into an aggressive and unpredictable man. Those around them did not know the truth. The main reason for his outbursts of anger was often money and a thirst for total control. The culmination came when Sarah decided to break off this destructive relationship. She insisted that her husband leave the family nest. But instead of leaving, Andrew started another argument. Terrified, Sarah broke free, grabbed her phone, and called the police. Upon arrival, officers confirmed that Andrew's actions posed a real threat to Sarah's safety and life. Police led the father of the family out of the house. After this incident, Sarah obtained a restraining order. It made it impossible for her ex-husband to approach her and the children. After the incident with the police, Andrew moved into his own apartment. Sarah remained with the girls in the family home in Oak Bay. For the young woman, a new chapter began. She had to work hard, often staying overtime, so that Chloe and Aubrey had everything they needed. But she was not alone. Her relatives came to help. The family surrounded the granddaughters with care, looking after them while their mom was at the office. Sarah became the whole world to the girls. She devoted every free minute only to them. It was during these quiet years that they developed their own little traditions. Their place of power became the picturesque Willows Beach, where they spent time walking by the ocean. Sarah also often took her daughters away from the city bustle to the Gulf Islands. She created a childhood for them filled with joy and peace. During this period, Andrew was deprived of the right to see his daughters and was obligated to pay child support. It seemed life was getting better and the threat had receded. While Sarah was building a safe haven for her daughters, Chloe and Aubrey were growing up. Chloe went to Christ Church Cathedral School, where she showed herself to be a diligent student. Her whole room was filled with drawings. She spent weekends horse riding, which her cousin taught her. This became her main passion. But Chloe had another favorite thing that she almost never parted with: a small pink baseball bat signed with her name. For the girl, it was a favorite toy, a symbol of her sports games which she cherished. Younger Aubrey, who attended St. Christopher Montessori Preschool, grew up funny and feisty. In the family, she was jokingly called the little boss for her ability to command, while remaining incredibly sweet. They were inseparable. Best friends, who grew up in love and abundance provided by their mom. But Sarah had to fight not only for their happiness, but also for their financial support alone. Over 3 years, from 2013 to 2016, Andrew accumulated a debt in child support, even though he had a good job. He simply refused to pay for food and clothes for his daughters. However, money was the least of the problems. In 2015, with the help of lawyers, Andrew managed to challenge the restraining order. The court, despite the non-payment of alimony and past aggression, allowed him to see the children on weekends. Unfortunately, Sarah soon began to notice that these visits were not always good for the girls. Returning from their father, they acted anxious. One day, Sarah found a mark on Aubrey's head. The father claimed over the phone she just bumped while playing. In November 2015, an even more terrifying confession from the child followed. It forced Sarah to immediately turn to Child Protective Services. An investigation began. But Andrew found an explanation for everything. And since there were no direct witnesses in his apartment, social services closed the case due to lack of evidence. They just threw up their hands, no proof. The custody battle continued. In late 2016, Sarah again questioned her ex-husband's ability to care for the children. In court, she voiced a whole list of frightening facts proving that Andrew was dangerous. Sarah reminded them of the incident in 2013, which ended in his arrest and handcuffs. She spoke about the strange mark found on Aubrey's body after visits to her father. She also brought up the frightening complaints that had sparked the investigation. She described a case of flagrant negligence when Andrew left the stroller with his daughter alone in a public place and walked away. Furthermore, he played a dirty game. He constantly badmouthed Sarah in front of the daughters, trying to turn them against their mother. In 2017, the decisive court hearings began. Sarah begged to limit the father's contact with the daughters, insisting that he was dangerous, but the system failed. Judge Victoria Gray, who was reviewing this case, made a fatal mistake. She considered that Andrew's aggressive behavior in the past was just a temporary reaction to household problems. For some reason, the judge unconditionally believed in his image of a successful professional working at the well-known company BC Ferries. To her, he remained a respectable economist whose career and status guaranteed stability. Moreover, the judge decided that Sarah was too protective of the children and exaggerated the risks. In her decision, she described Andrew as a loving father who could give a lot to his daughters. The court ruled that the father had the right to take 6-year-old Chloe and 4-year-old Aubrey on weekends and holidays without the supervision of the mother or social workers. Andrew got what he wanted, 40% of custody time. He was proud of this victory, but no one in the courtroom knew that behind the facade of a loving father was a man falling into an abyss. While Sarah and her parents were doing everything for the girls' well-being, Andrew's life was rapidly collapsing. Back in May 2017, he quit his job at BC Ferries. He had no income, but he had a terrible secret, a severe gambling addiction. He blew all his savings and even his pension funds on gambling, hoping to win it back. By December 2017, his financial situation became catastrophic. He had accumulated huge debts. In his apartment in a prestigious neighborhood with a view of the Pacific Ocean, the electricity was cut off for non-payment. Since the heating there was electric, the heat left the home along with the light. In those days, the weather in Oak Bay was damp and raw. The temperature dropped to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The apartment quickly cooled down, turning into an icy trap. But even in this darkness and cold, the girls tried to find joy. When they returned to their mom, they excitedly described that at Dad's house they played camping. They walked around with flashlights and slept in warm clothes like real tourists. For the child's mind, the lack of light and the cold were an adventure. Sarah guessed the true reason for this game. She understood that camping was a forced measure of survival in a powerless apartment. Packing her daughters for their father, she anxiously packed warm hats and gloves, knowing that they would need them inside the apartment. But she decided not to bring up this topic before the holidays so as not to provoke another conflict and not ruin Christmas for the children. She made a note in her diary to discuss this later. Sarah could not know that later would never come. According to the court decision, the girls were to spend Christmas of 2017 with their father. December 21st was Sarah's birthday. They managed to celebrate a little with the children in the morning, but by the afternoon, in accordance with the court order, she had to drive the girls to their father. The drop-off took place at Andrew's home on Beach Drive. Despite her internal anxiety, Sarah tried to stay calm. Upon returning home, Sarah noticed that in the rush Chloe had forgotten her favorite stuffed animal, a plush toy she never parted with. Understanding how important this was for her daughter, Sarah immediately turned around and drove back. She walked up to the window of the first-floor apartment and knocked. The blinds parted and Sarah saw both girls. They were wearing their fancy holiday dresses, smiling and looking happy. This calmed her mother's heart. Sarah handed over the toy, waved goodbye, and drove away. She did not know that she was seeing her children for the last time. 3 days passed. On December 24th, Christmas Eve, surveillance cameras captured a scene that breaks the heart. Andrew and the girls entered the local Fairway Market. It is known that he went there with a specific purpose. He wanted to return empty bottles just to get a few dollars in cash. He did not even have enough money for food. The footage shows Andrew calmly chatting with another adult while his daughters stand nearby. 6-year-old Chloe is clutching a large plush toy resembling a lamb or a dog. It is unclear if she brought it from home or picked it up there, but she looks calm. The children trust their father completely. They are unaware that he is standing at the very edge of the abyss. On their way out, the girls linger briefly near a notice board before walking out into the street. Soon, these simple frames would be broadcast across the entire country. Christmas morning came on December 25th. Sarah woke up in an empty house. To pass the time until the daughters returned, she busied herself with final preparations. She cleaned the house and placed gifts under the tree. She imagined how in a few hours the house would be filled with laughter. According to the custody terms, Andrew was supposed to return the girls by noon. The clock struck 2 p.m. No one arrived. Sarah started calling and texting Andrew. One call, then a second. The phone was silent. Messages remained unanswered. Anxiety turned into panic. Unable to wait any longer, Sarah drove to her ex-husband's house. The apartment windows were dark. She knocked on the door and shouted at the window. But in response, there was only silence. In desperation, she turned to the neighbors. One of the residents told her a frightening thing. Early in the morning, he heard children's voices, but closer to noon, dull thuds and noise came from Andrew's apartment. The call to 911 came immediately after the conversation with the neighbor. When the first officer arrived at the house on Beach Drive, the apartment door was locked. With the help of the building manager, police managed to get inside. There was absolute darkness and unnatural silence in the apartment. The officer flipped the switch, but the light did not turn on. The electricity had long been cut off. He had to take out his service flashlight. The beam of light cut through the gloom and highlighted a scene that made the policeman freeze. It seemed as if a horror movie was being filmed in this apartment. The walls and floor were stained. In the hallway there was a chaotic, scary mess. Among the scattered things on the floor, the flashlight beam found a familiar object, that very pink bat with Chloe's name. Now it lay here not as a toy, but as a silent witness to what had happened. Officers went into the bedrooms. In one room they found 6-year-old Chloe, in the other 4-year-old Aubrey. The girls were in their beds. It seemed they were just sleeping, but medics, having examined the children, only shook their heads. Help came too late. The silence of the apartment was broken only by heavy labored breathing. Following the sound, police entered the bathroom. There they found Andrew. He was unconscious and in critical condition. It was obvious that wounds did not appear accidentally. When doctors began to administer first aid, he regained consciousness for a moment. But instead of asking where his daughters were and if they were okay, he only quietly asked the medics not to save him. While doctors fought for the life of the only survivor in this apartment, an unbearable scene was unfolding on the street. Sarah, in desperation, tried to break through the police cordon into the house. Officers had to hold her back by force to report the terrible truth. Chloe and Aubrey would not return home and would not unwrap their Christmas presents. Doctors saved Andrew's life. In the hospital, he recovered quickly. As soon as his condition stabilized, he was arrested and charged. However, when the trial began, Andrew refused to admit guilt. He presented the jury with a story worthy of a Hollywood action movie, trying to convince everyone that he himself suffered at the hands of unknowns. According to his new version, a mysterious loan shark named Paul was to blame for everything, to whom Andrew allegedly owed a large sum due to gambling. He said that Paul's people had keys and broke into the apartment. He assured that they dealt with everyone inside, leaving him in critical condition. But the prosecution presented facts that destroyed this legend. First, Paul did not exist. Instead, a long letter written by Andrew's hand and addressed to his sister lay on the kitchen table. There was not a word about bandits in it, but there were many complaints about Sarah, his parents, and the injustice of life. This was the note of a man who is offended by the whole world, not someone who is afraid of the mafia. Second, forensics noticed the floor. Throughout the apartment, red sock prints were found. Analysis showed that the fabric pattern on the prints perfectly matched the socks Andrew was wearing on that terrible day. And these were the only prints on the floor found in the apartment. This meant that there were no mercenaries in the apartment. The only one walking through the rooms after the tragedy was Andrew himself. In addition, medical examination results were obtained, which shocked even experienced detectives. Furthermore, forensic experts confirmed that the fingerprints found on the bat and the kitchen knife belonged to Andrew. No less terrible was the fact that Chloe's favorite pink baseball bat, which she never parted with, was used against her. The defense dragged out the process as best they could, but justice was served. In 2019, after long hearings, the jury took 3 days to reach a verdict. Aubrey Berry was found guilty. The court sentenced him to life imprisonment without the right to parole for 22 years. The verdict brought a legal end to this case, but it could not fill the ringing silence that settled forever in Sarah's home. This tragedy shook not only Oak Bay, but all of Canada. People were outraged not only by the cruelty of the father, but also by the blindness of the system that was supposed to protect the children. Unfortunately, despite mass protests and petitions, no serious sanctions followed against the judge or social workers. But the state machine did react, and these changes became fundamental. On March 1, 2021, crucial amendments to the Federal Divorce Act came into force in Canada. For the first time in the country's history, the law included a clear definition of such actions by a partner as financial control, psychological pressure, and threats. Now, courts are obliged to consider these factors when deciding custody issues. The law no longer places parental rights above the safety of children. Sarah Cotton called these changes a huge step forward, expressing hope that the new rules would save the lives of other children. Today, Sarah Cotton continues to live, preserving the memory of her daughters. She has become a symbol of incredible resilience. Chloe will forever remain in the memory of loved ones as a talented artist and horse lover, and Aubrey as a funny and feisty little girl who knew how to command with a smile. Their story changed the laws of an entire country. And this is the main legacy of the little Chloe and Aubrey from Oak Bay. Friends, thank you for watching the video to the end. Please don't forget to put a like under this video and share your thoughts in the comments. Spreading awareness of these stories is vital, and your engagement helps more people see this story and learn from it.